We often talk about big bosses and the most powerful enemies, but what about the small ones? Hi folks, it's Falcon, and today on gameranx, 10 of the nastiest little enemies in video games. Starting off at number 10, Facehuggers! Facehuggers are a time-honored death in the sci-fi first-person shooter. In the actual mythology, they lay eggs in their hosts, which is not cool, not a thing that I would ever want to experience, but they kill you in games generally. Every time they've made an Aliens FPS with facehuggers in it, they always really want to make sure that you can really experience the facehuggers. As games have gotten more and more realistic, it's gotten more and more disgusting. They always creepy crawl up just like any other bug, jump on your face and attach themselves. Even the pixelated ones are gross from back in the 90s, but let's be real, Alien Isolation, ugh. Moving on to number 9, it's the Kanjou from Monster Hunter. I mean, they're kind of like lobster armadillos. That's basically the way I know them. If you combined a lobster and an armadillo. They have armor, and they can roll up in the armor and roll around. And they're annoying because they can also latch onto bigger enemies and act as armor for the bigger enemies. And more than one of them can actually be kind of hard to handle. Also, if you're wanting to actually fight them and get materials out of them, they can just run off. They're very slippery. I mean, if you want to get their shell and use it to make armor, like, it's not a bad get or anything. But it may be more trouble than it's worth, and not necessarily because they're gonna beat you, but because, like I said, they're fairly slippery. They're a little less ugly than facehuggers, so I'm not gonna give them like a gross characterization or anything. I mean, if you've ever eaten a lobster, you probably don't think these things are too gross. But if you've never eaten a lobster, maybe. Maybe not, I don't know. They're just really annoying, if I'm totally honest. I kinda don't like interacting with them. Moving on to number 8, it is Zubat from Pokemon. Oh, Zubat, you come up so much in certain areas and you always poison me. And not only do you poison me, it's harder to hit you because you're flying. You've got good speed, Zubat, I'll admit. Are you worth catching, Zubat? I don't know. And that goes for regular Pokemon as much as it goes for Pokemon Go if you're still playing that monstrosity. Zubat, a bit of a Pokemon Go villain. If you really want to see people complaining, look up Zubat hard on Google, and you will just get like an endless number of posts from Reddit and other forums that are just like, Zubat is so hard to catch. Like, you see people talking about how they catch other Pokemon on the first try, but it takes them like 12 Pokeballs to get a Zubat. And like, Zubat's not even particularly powerful, but for whatever reason, he really eludes the Pokemon Go folks. And at number 7, hey, what do you get when you cross a rodent with a reptile and strap a bomb to them? Well, that's tickers from Gears of War. Now, the Locust employed these things as a sort of mobile landmine. They didn't like blow up by nature or anything like that. No, they just scurry around and are generally bad. But they put bombs on them. They'd strap a tank of emulsion to them. They get their name from running around and having their claws tick on the floor like a cat, leading me to question why we don't call cats tickers. It's probably because they're also a bomb, and bombs tick in, culture. As a mobile landmine, they are, of course, actually pretty dangerous despite the fact that they aren't strong or anything like that, and if you see them running around, obviously, the thing you're going to want to do is aim and shoot at them before they get anywhere near you, because explosions, it doesn't matter how accurate they are or how clever they are, they just have to run at you. And at number 6, Varkids from Borderlands. Hey, do you hate mosquitoes? Because they're very big mosquito-looking things that you can actually stop by destroying the pods ahead of time before they spawn, because they're not really that hard to destroy, and you also get better experience and loot from it. However, after they emerge from the pods, they can go back in the pods, heal themselves, and at any time, they could evolve into a worse mosquito. The larva isn't really that horrific, but when you get to the badass level of Varkids, no, don't like it. I literally itch from looking at it. What's maybe not great is that the hives are actually a female Varkid, and they get very big. They're gross. They're frankly very gross. Moving on to number 5.
I was starting to wonder when you might notice us.
Salazar from Resident Evil 4, who is just a little boy who is an old man.
Did you say old man, Mr. Kennedy? It might come as a surprise, but I'm only 20 years old.
Salazar is kind of annoying, but he also had several of the plagueis parasites under his control. He is becoming one with a big old boss parasite, and you had to fight the boss parasite. And it's actually not a hard boss, but he himself manages to elude any kind of real anything for quite a while, and by the time you get to kill him, you're really stoked that it's easy, because you're like, enough, dude. He's one of those bad guys that's like perfect, because when you defeat him, it's like, yeah. He does a pretty good job of dressing like an absolute tool, and that's part of it, but really, his incessant cackling is really the thing I'm personally against. And at number 4, the Flood from Halo. Oh, the Flood. Isn't the Flood interesting? It's a version, obviously, of the whole facehugger idea, and derives a lot of its elements from Alien, the Alien franchise, not the noun Alien. But the thing about Halo is that they did such a good job creating an atmosphere that was fairly unique, which ultimately placed these Flood, whether we're talking about the little guys who are about to take over some bodies, or the taken over bodies, as kind of these wild freaks, which end up seeming very feral until a Gravemind appears. And then they coordinate with this Gravemind, who can think faster than a computer, because it's the accumulated experience and knowledge of everything that the Flood has taken over. Now, when you get Alien-style horror, you often get things that are intended to feel more like zombies or aliens again. But ultimately, you actually end up getting to interact with the Gravemind at some point, and it really fills out a sort of a mythology that's very cool and actually in-depth. The first 3 Halo games are just beyond fun, and if you have the means to, I would highly recommend playing them before we get another Halo game, because they're the base. Everything has sprung forward from those 3. Moving on to number 3, Casa Doors from Fallout New Vegas. Hey, do you hate bugs? And do you hate bullet sponges? Because here's both of those things in one enemy. They're not big, they're not like a boss or anything. But hey, if a giant rad scorpion suddenly sprung wings, that's basically what you're dealing with. And given they can move on a Z-axis at their will, they can be very hard to shoot. Not that it matters, like I said, they're definitely bullet sponges and you have to load them up with lead for them to stop. They're less gross than a lot of the enemies on this list, and that's fine. I'm perfectly fine with that. But hey, if you don't like scorpions, I bet you wouldn't like flying scorpions or flying radioactive scorpions. And that's the situation I find myself in every time I see one of these things. Oh, it's a flying scorpion that's radioactive and I can't kill it easily. Rad scorpions are the best case for the VAT system, period. Moving on to number 2, it's the Medusa Head from Castlevania. Now, it might sound like a Medusa Head is a thing that there would only be one of, because there's probably not a lot of Medusas. They don't even have to be in a game that Medusa is in order to be flying around and trying to hit you in the face. But where they really got particularly bad was Castlevania Symphony of the Night, where they suddenly were able to petrify you on contact. Let's say you're jumping over some spikes and you're hit by a Medusa Head. You ain't jumping over those spikes anymore, you're going straight for them. The only way to avoid that is having a specific shield, aptly named the Medusa Shield, equipped, and then obviously they just sort of are a head that's floating around. I can't petrify you anymore. And it's a little less simple than that. There's like gold ones and blue ones and all that, but frankly, I've had enough of any of them. Castlevania Symphony of the Night is great, it gets you invested, and therefore these guys are super annoying, because they can totally mess up your flow, and that's really what matters, right? It sounds silly in a vampire killing game, but the rhythm you get going in Castlevania is, in my opinion, vital. And finally, at number 1, we're landing at Headcrabs, which you're gonna remember that Headcrabs are very similar to aliens, the Facehuggers, and they basically do some of the same things, except unlike the Facehuggers, and more like the Flood, they are able to possess a host as opposed to lay eggs in a host. But what's perhaps the most strange thing about Headcrabs is you can actually domesticate them. You can teach them to be a pet. If a person removes the beak of a headcrab, it can no longer take over your brain, and also for whatever reason, gets rid of its parasitic instincts. But just to be clear, you can't do that as Gordon Freeman in the game. You have to basically end them. Otherwise, they kill you. And they're pretty annoying to do that to, because sometimes they will jump out of nowhere and you have no idea that they're there. And a quick little bonus for you, chickens in Skyrim. Now, they're very, very weak. They can't really do a lot to you, but if you kill one, the townsfolk will not stand for it. Chickens are apparently very popular amongst the townsfolk, and they will wreak revenge upon anyone who brings damage to one. What are some particularly annoying or difficult little enemies that you've encountered in games? Leave us a comment, let us know what you think. If you like this video, please click like, and if you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every day of the week, and the best way to see them first is, of course, a subscription. As always, we thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter at FalconHero, and we'll see you next time right here on gameranx.